All right. All right, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Commissioner Wilson. Let's go ahead and get started here. Ms. Linker, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Wilson?
Here.
Chair Matich?
Here. April 7th, 2021. This is our Public Outreach and Technology Committee meeting. Item number 1 is public comment for items not on the agenda. Do we have any public comment for items not on the agenda? Hearing and seeing none, we'll move to item number 2, approval of the March 11th, 2021 committee. Commissioner Wilson, did you have any edits or comments on our meeting minutes?
No, Chair Matich.
All right, do we have a motion?
I move the adoption of the minutes.
I will second. Ms. Linker?
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Chair Matich?
Aye.
The motion passes.
Thank you. Moving right along to item number 3. This is our discussion of our Fppc website, and with us is our communications director, Jay Waringa. Morning, Mr. Waringa.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Commissioner Wilson.
Good morning.
A couple of things that this committee instructed us at the last meeting to look into. The first was a direction to do the outreach to external stakeholders for input into any potential website redesign or changes. I can report that we have made an overture to a number of those groups. Most of them did respond that they would be providing some input. As of this morning, I have not received any of that yet, but I do have a meeting this afternoon with a representative of the CPAA, which wanted to provide some input, which obviously is one of our more significant stakeholders. So I will be continuing to gather that hopefully within the next week or two, so that by the next meeting, we have some direction, both from external stakeholders and an internal discussion with executive staff and IT as to what is basically doable and what we want. So that's the report from external stakeholders. The other ask, I believe, was from Commissioner Wilson as to potential costs for changing items on the website, and specifically the search functions and improved and enhanced search functions. And since our Chief Information Officer, Larry Crabtree, knows more, has more knowledge in his cuticle and his little finger than I do in the vast expanse of my existence, we've got Larry here with us this morning to answer your questions and discuss that aspect of it, because like a lot of things in life, the answer is it depends. So with that, I'll toss it over to Larry.
Okay, thanks, Jay. Yes, in order to, I assume we're talking about the main search on our pages. That's on every page. In order to understand the changes we might be able to make, I'd like to just kind of go over how it works today, and then we can go from there. Right now, if you put in, say, 2 words like Form 700 instructions, what kind of query that does is it says, give me all of the pages that have Form 700 or instructions on it. So what you'll get is the very top ones will be the pages that have both, and then you'll get quite a few more pages that have either one or the other on it. So that's what's called an OR search. So an OR means, it's got this term or that term. The search engine we have, we can set it up to do an AND search. So what the AND would be is it would only return pages that have both terms in it. So that cuts down on the number of return items by quite a bit. For example, I did a couple of test searches right on our search engine, and for example, like for 2 terms with an OR search, I'd get back 320 some returns, and with an AND search, I'd get maybe 3. So I don't know if that's where we're trying to get to. Are we trying to get to where it's more targeted that way? I'm looking for a little bit of,
Well, Chair Matich?
Yes, Commissioner Wilson.
Well, first of all, Mr. Crabtree and Mr. Wyringa, thank you very much for all of your hard work behind the scenes. And I just want to say from the outset, when I first became a commissioner in 2019, I had some ideas. That doesn't mean I have IT expertise, but I had some IT ideas. And Mr. Crabtree and Ms. Hahn were very responsive and very creative in their suggestions. So what you're suggesting in terms of the more targeted searches, Mr. Crabtree, you're right on point. Because to be able to zero in on more targeted searches is the ultimate goal. And and whatever we come up with, I know it's not necessarily final, but what you've suggested is definitely encompasses what I was proposing and what I, at least on my end, had in mind.
okay.
Of course, any ideas I have are subject to the other commissioners, starting with the chair.
No, I think I think what you described, Commissioner Wilson, and what Mr. Crabtree was describing as an option are good starting places. My question for Mr. Crabtree is, how easy is it to change from an or function to an and function, and what's the cost associated with that?
Well, the component that comes with our system that we have only does the or search. So we'd have to get one built that does the and. I don't have a number right now because I just kind of got into this kind of late, but I could definitely find out what that would cost. I've been talking to a vendor about it already, but wanted to find out if that was exactly what we were looking for.
Well,
There's a couple of ways we could do it. We could make the search itself an and, or another option would be to leave the search the way it is. And then when you hit the results page, then you could have maybe a button that says refined search or narrow search. And you click on that and then it gets rid of, then that does the and search. So then you have both kind of.
I would kind of defer to what you and the commissioners would recommend. But Chair Matich, I would think that to the extent it is more of a and function as opposed to or, would immediately give you a more of a targeted search. But that's just my my kind of gut reaction. I mean, people tend to become conditioned when they're using search engines like Google, Microsoft Edge, the Apple search functions. So they're more accustomed to targeted searches. But I think ultimately, at least from my perspective, it would turn a lot on what's going to be the cost factors involved. And then I would also recommend that if you talk to a vendor and a vendor says the cost is X number of dollars, a critical question to ask a vendor is, have you done other business with other agencies or state commissions in California? Because to the extent other vendors have provided similar upgrades for other state governmental entities, one, it might save us some money, but more importantly, it would give us a sense of what kind of work product that vendor would likely produce for us. Does the PUC, Secretary of State's office, Franchise Tax Board, et cetera, do they have more refined search functions? I don't know the answer to that, but that's just something to, I think, keep in mind as we move forward.
Yes, when I was talking to the vendor yesterday, they were showing some things they did for DGS and that kind of.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
they're pretty well known around the state to do website. Of course we have to go out to bid, but you always have, that's what the things they've done. They've done quite a few state websites. I think they've even done Department of Technology. So
Okay, okay. Well, that's great information. Thank you very much.
So a couple of follow-up questions I have, Mr. Crabtree.
sure.
First, so we've talked about the allowing users to do an and type search versus just an or. Could we also, and this is based on my experience with, Lexis and Westlaw and other things we use in law practice, but could we use a search for within paragraph? Oftentimes when I really wanted to get granular, I was looking for 2 words in the same paragraph or quotations around an exact phrase that I was looking for.
Okay.
Are we able to perfect our search function to allow for those types of searches?
We can actually do both of those that you're talking about. One would be called a proximity search, where you say, I want to find this word within 20 words of this one. Is that kind of what that would be what's called a proximity search.
Okay.
There also is a quoted search where you can put like 2 words in quotes and find that. Now the hard part about that is teaching people how to use those things, if you know what I mean. They have to put it in, actually put it in the search box itself, right? So we could put when they do hit the landing page, we could have a thing there that shows them how to do advanced searches, like those kind of searches. We could possibly do something like that. I know a lot of people know about the quoting things. I saw quite a few of those in our log where people quote 2 words, or somebody's name to find them. So those are all possibilities. If we build in the and on the top search there, then when they hit the landing page, like I say, we can have maybe something that could bring up instructions on how to do advanced searching, that kind of thing. It's pretty much the same kind of things you can use on a Google search, you can use on our search.
Right. Yeah, I think that's what we're looking for in terms of improving our search capability currently on the website. So the other question I had for you is, it sounds like the plan is to take this feedback and convey it to a vendor who would then build this for us, and then we'd be able to get a quote from them and decide whether we want to proceed.
Right.
My question is are we not able to do that internally? We don't
have
that itself?
We don't have the expertise to build components for the contact management system that we have. We don't have anybody in the house that can do that. So we're kind of, we have to kind of farm this out.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, once
What
we
do you
get
think
it. Oh, go ahead.
Go
Sorry.
ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, once we have it, we can maybe make some changes to it, but to actually build it from scratch, we don't have the expertise for that.
Okay, great. What's your time frame, you think, in being able to go out, convey this information to vendors, and receive feedback on cost and timing that you could share with Commissioner Wilson and I?
We have to put together a little statement of work of what we want. Then we usually have to put it out to a bid for approximately a week. And then we get the bids back, and then so it's a matter of how long it takes us to do the statement of work and a week to get the bids back. Then we should know what it would cost. So that would probably take us a week or 2 max to come up with a statement of work, because we want to make sure it's solid, so we get what we want. So a week or 2 for that, and then wait for the bids to come back, and then we should be good.
Okay, so you think this is something you might be able to report back to us on at the May Outreach
Yeah.
and Technology Committee meeting? Okay.
Yeah, I don't think that's a problem.
Okay. Commissioner Wilson, does that work for you, receiving an update from Mr. Crabtree at our May meeting?
Right. I mean, based on, the questions that I had, you covered those, Chair Matich, and then Mr. Crabtree, I think, came up with a practical timeline to be able to put this out to bid and to, get some feedback and then implement these changes. So that seems to be kind of a, practical, timeline, especially given that we're still dealing with restrictions related to COVID.
All right, Mr. Crabtree, I think you have your
Yes.
your marching orders for the
Okay.
May meeting. And look, if you get into this and you end up needing some more time, either for the statement of work or the bids don't come in as quickly, just let us know and we can,
Okay.
maybe come back to this in June if you're not able to report back in May.
Okay, and just so I'm clear, I want to make sure that I'm getting the right thing. We're going to take the main search, we're going to make that an and then when we hit the results page, we're going to allow them to use all of the different types of searches, like proximity searches, the knots, all those kind of things. Is that correct?
Well, here's what I would say is I think we're more interested in the enhanced search capabilities. To my mind, the ideal world would be you can put in those, for example, you could search for two words together, the and search or the proximity search,
Yeah.
all from essentially, one place, the landing page on
Yeah.
where you do the search. If we have to do it, if we're absolutely forced to do it where it's a two-step process, then I think, you should tell us that and just let us know that's our only option. If
Yeah.
there's a way to build it in on the front end, to me, that seems a lot more user-friendly and what a lot of folks are already kind of used to doing anyway.
Okay, so we want the main search to be able to do all of these things, but we're assuming that people are going to know how to use these because
Yeah.
there's really no place
Well,
to put instructions.
Yeah, I don't know that we're
Yeah.
making any assumptions. We'd probably have some information on
Okay.
that page that made it clear to folks, this is how you perform the advanced
Okay.
search.
Okay,
Yeah. And Chair Matich?
Yes, Commissioner Wilson.
Yeah, I would agree with everything that the chair said, but also I've found personally, and I think many others may have found this to be the case as well, when you go to a specific website and they have an internal search engine, to the extent those functions parallel what users are accustomed to when they're on Google, for example, I think the transition will be seamless, and most individuals won't even have to figure out, okay, how do I do a search? Because they'll instinctively realize that it's comparable to searches that they do on a day-to-day basis. So the way that the chair described it, I think covers that point in a very clear way.
okay.
All right. Mr. Crabtree, any more questions for you or clarity that we can give you on what we're asking for?
I don't think so. I think I know what we're looking at now.
Okay, great. I see Executive Director West wishes to be recognized. Good morning.
Good morning. I was just wondering if we had any questions about the results from the searches, because right now they're not categorized. And I know that was kind of one of the discussions, I don't know if I had with Commissioner Wilson at the meeting or after, but for instance, do we want the results from the search also to be categorized by type, like advice letter, campaign manual, or are we just focusing on the search engine? I just want to make sure that I understand. So when Mr. Crabtree writes up, we know what the parameters are.
Well, the search engine has no knowledge of what type of document it is. That would be something that, I mean, you can add that, but it would have to be all done by hand. As of right now, it just knows this file has this text in it, and it doesn't know what type of document it is or any of that.
And
We have those other kind of searches we can do, to do, for example, like the advice letter search, stipulation search. If we have some other ones we want to do, we can also do that.
if I may
Mr.
add,
Wawringa?
if I may add to the committee, that is some of the feedback we received from internal feedback from division chiefs and other staff. And just anecdotally, it's some of the feedback I've gotten so far from the external sources, that it would be nice to, people are looking for advice letters, or they're looking for stipulations, or they're looking for sections of the campaign manual. So that is feedback we have received already about the search, and delineating it into those kind of, if we can, into those kind of categories.
All right, Commissioner Wilson?
Yeah, I think that Executive Director West's suggestion is in line with kind of what I think we've envisioned. So to the extent it could even be targeted further, then that's something that would be a good idea. I know a lot of this will turn on how long it will take to implement some of these changes, and a lot of that will determine how practical it is. But I think Executive Director West's recommendation is one that's consistent with what we've been discussing.
Well, we do have searches for all of these, for stipulations, for advice letters, for all of those. We have all those different types of searches. I mean, this top level search, it's not going to be a small task to categorize these documents, because there's over 60,000 of them, and people have to do it by hand.
So can I ask a question, Mr. Crabtree,
Sure.
about that? So if I go to our landing page and I click on the search function, and I put in the name of somebody who I know would be in an advice letter, for example, that advice letter is going to pop up, right?
Yeah, that's what I understand. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's my understanding too.
Yeah.
But then there's a separate part of our website that for advice letters, where I can search just for advice letters. Right?
Correct.
And if I put in that same person's name there, I'll also get the advice letter there, right?
Right.
And so I guess my question is, if what we're talking about is making it easier for folks to ensure that the results are the type of document that they're looking for from the main search engine, right? Could we have some type of a filter where I want to search for documents on the website that are in the category of advice letter, or manual, or stipulation, whatever the case may be?
Okay.
Could we do something like that?
Well, like I said, that search is different than the other ones, and it has no knowledge of what type of document anything is. It doesn't know an advice letter from a stipulation, from a training manual. It just knows this file has this text on it. Now you could categorize them, but that would have to be done by hand. It may be, the other searches are kind of, they're really the same thing, except for they have even some more, you can maybe look up, just think of advice letters, look at what year they were done and things like that, find John Smith, 1999 advice letter. So it has some metadata fields about it, whereas the top level search has no knowledge of document types. You can do that, but it has to be done by hand. And then the issue becomes, right now, the workflow in our system, when something gets published, it grabs the text out of the document and puts it in there. So every time you put a new document up that hadn't been there before, you'd have to go and also add the document type to the system by hand. So it wouldn't be just a one-up thing where you do it once and you're done. you do it, you'd have to do it once, you get them all updated, and then you still have to do them one at a time when you publish new documents. So
All right. All right. Well, if you, maybe you can just,
we can take a look
Take
and
a
see
look,
what the issues are. I can get, what it would take to do it. I mean,
yeah,
I
and it
can
may
do
be that
estimates.
based on what you tell us, we decide not to recommend that, but
Yeah.
I think at least having a better understanding of what we
Right.
can and can't do would be helpful at
Right.
this point.
Okay.
All right. All right, thank you, Mr. Crabtree.
Uh-huh.
Commissioner Wilson, anything further for Mr. Crabtree?
No, I had another question, but I think Mr. Crabtree answered it. Thank you very much.
Great. All right, Mr. Waringa, do you have anything further on your portion of the website project?
Other than I anticipate I'll be able to report to the committee, getting this feedback from the external stakeholders. We plan to have bring that together, have a discussion with executive staff and IT, and then bring our suggestions to the committee and then to the full commission.
All right. What's your anticipated timeline on that? Is that something you want to, you feel like you can come back and report on in May, or do you want to come back in June?
I'm anticipating we can get the feedback to your committee here in May, and then hopefully bring that to the full commission in June. That's
Great.
that's what I anticipate. That's my goal.
All right. Well, that's a good goal, Mr. Waringa. I like it. All right. Commissioner Wilson, anything further for Mr. Waringa at this point?
No, other than I want to thank Mr. Crabtree and Mr. Wieringa for their presentations. Thank you.
Yeah, great job, guys. Before we let you go, though, we'll open it up for any public comment on item 3, discussion of the FPPC website. Hearing and seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Crabtree. Thank you, Mr. Waringa. Go ahead and move on now to the item number 4, campaign filing location reference sheet update. And with us this morning is our General Counsel, Mr. Bainbridge. Morning.
Good morning. What we have today is this is a cheat sheet basically of the where for filing campaign statements. We have the filing schedules which cover the when to file. So what we've Commissioner Wilson had brought this up a couple months ago is why don't we put all this information on where to file in one place on the website? So what we have here is not live on our website yet. It's still in development, but wanted to give you a sense of what it's going to look like, get any input you have before we put together a final version to go live. So hopefully you can see it on your screen now, what we have. On the right-hand side there, you'll see it's based on what type of committee it is. So you have candidates, general purpose, ballot measures. So whatever type of committee it is, they click on that. This one we're looking at here is for candidates, and it has a list of each of the type of forms the candidate will have to file for campaign statements and reports. And then the table shows, based on what type of candidate they are, whether they're state or local or multi-county, where they need to file, and then what needs to be filed. And so anyone who is running for one of these offices can go to this page, scroll down at each of the different types of forms that they'll need to file, and figure out easily where they need to file those. And then, so if Ellen, can you scroll down a little more towards the bottom? So those are all the different types of forms, and then there's some more information here that might be useful, and then some links to campaign manuals at the bottom if they need more information beyond just where they should be filing each of the different forms. So that's what we have at this point. It's complicated, the timing of it, and part of the reason we haven't put anything up yet is the CARS system is supposed to go live in July, which will change some of this because all of the filings with Secretary of State will be electronic and there'll be no more paper filings. So what we have done reflects the current law, but again, that should be changing here in just a couple months. And if there's, that's all I have. If there's any questions or comments or suggestions on how we could improve it, let me know.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Bainbridge. Commissioner Wilson?
And Mr. Bainbridge, that was very impressive presentation. So it seems to be right on point. So thank you.
So I'm just looking, like, just stick with where to file the Form 501. Now, I like the format. I think it'll be user-friendly. I like that we've consolidated this information in one place. I think, good job on that. My question is, when I'm just thinking about this from the public standpoint, it says, I'm looking at candidate office holders, state officers, where to file. It says electronic filers, Secretary of State, and then what to file, paper original. And so on the one hand, it looks like somebody's an electronic filer. On the other, what to file, they're filing paper. And so I guess my question is, how does that fit together? I would think it's electronic means electronic, but tell me.
Well, current law, electronic filer means they file their campaign statements electronically, but they still would be filing the 501 and the 410 on paper. Again, this is going away in a couple months. So when the version goes up after July 1st, what to file, it will indicate it's an electronic filing.
All right, good. That's what I was going to ask. I thought we had gotten to the point where we were getting rid of all the paper filings. So is that that's part of the CARS rollout then? So as soon as that rolls out, then we would update this to reflect that it's only electronic.
Right.
Okay. All right. Well, Commissioner Wilson?
Yeah, and I think Mr. Bainbridge was pretty clear on this, but we won't roll out anything until CARS is implemented and fully up and running, correct?
That would be my recommendation. We're still fine-tuning this, but I think because that's only 2 months out, my recommendation would be once CARS rolls out, we'll put this up.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Bainbridge. I think this is a good job by you and your staff putting this together for us. Let me pause right now and ask if there's any public comment on item number 4. This is our filing location reference sheet. Hearing and seeing none. Again, thank you, Mr. Bainbridge. Good job.
Thank you.
And now we will move on to our final item, discussion of advice letters that are housed on our Fppc website. And with us again, Mr. Bainbridge.
Yeah, this is an issue that Commissioner Wilson had brought up at our last commission meeting last month about what to do about old advice letters that are out of date or maybe are discussing a law that is no longer in effect. And so we had an internal meeting about it, discussed it, looked into what we could do. First, I'll tell you what we already do with letters. If a letter has been rescinded, we add a header to the letter indicating that the letter has been rescinded. What we don't recommend is removing letters from the website. The reason for this is we're required to keep all of our letters in perpetuity and have them available to the public. We don't have to keep them on the website, but in the past we have actually removed letters that were old or had been superseded by subsequent letters or the law had changed. And what we found was we received a lot of Public Records Act requests for those letters because people who were researching issues would see the old letter cited in a more current letter and want to read the old letter because they have no idea what it talks about, or it may be discussing a different issue than what the issue for which it had been rescinded. So when we removed letters from the website in the past, we found we got a lot of requests for those letters that had been removed. So it created a workload issue of having to get these letters and produce them to the requester, because again, we have to keep them forever and they're public records. So we found it was easier just to keep them on the website. So what our recommendation would be in that vein is not to remove letters, but to add to our search page for letters an explanation. And there's some there now, but I think we would bulk it up a little bit, that letters are for the intended recipient and apply the law as it exists at the time of the request or the conduct in which they're asking the question about, and make that clear in the search so that people who are looking at them know, one, these letters are specific to the facts of the person requesting it. It is advice to that person on how to comply with the law. Essentially, it isn't it doesn't create precedent. It's not like reading case law. So make that point clear, and then also make it clear that this is the law as it was in effect at that time. That should tip them off that they should be aware that, and look, if they're interested in a particular regulation, they can see in the regulation when it's been amended. So if the letter was before amendments to the regulation, they'll know they're now dealing with a newer section of the regulation, which may or may not change the analysis depending on what the changes were to the regulation. But at least this would tip them off to be aware of this issue, that this letter may not, the analysis or the conclusion may not be the same, even if the facts are the same, because the law could have changed. So that would be our advice. I think the other issue with removing letters is oftentimes letters concern various provisions of the statutes and regulations. So a letter may be discussing 6 different regulations, particularly the conflict letters often get into different sections. So there may be part of it that is no longer the applicable regulation, but there may be other parts that are still good. And since we don't have a head note system like you see with case law, I think we're better off leaving the letters there and trusting people will determine what law is applicable today that maybe wasn't back then, or vice versa, as opposed to removing letters and then we've maybe removed something inadvertently that is relevant still. And I think the other thing I would point out with removing letters is that even when regs are amended or repealed, the interpretation from them may still be the same. So they still may be useful to the public to be able to read these old letters, even if the regulation that they're discussing isn't still in effect. So again, our recommendation is to bulk up the warning on the website and make sure people are aware what exactly the letters are and what they apply to, as opposed to removing any letters.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Bainbridge. Commissioner Wilson, questions for Mr. Bainbridge?
Well, some of the questions I had, Mr. Bainbridge, addressed in his presentation, and it makes total sense to specify that letters are rescinded or superseded. And Mr. Bainbridge clearly outlined, based on discussions with his staff, why letters should not be removed. So that makes sense. And then with the forthcoming updates to the website that would allow for more targeted searches, that will also, I think, parallel with what we're doing overall on the website.
No, I agree with that. One question for you, Mr. Bainbridge. So your recommendation is that we beef up the language on the advice letter page to give more description of the non-precedential value of normal advice letters, and that the underlying law may change, and reminding people to double check. So what is your anticipated timeline to add that language to the website? Because that seems like a relatively minor thing to do in the grand scheme of things. So just curious, like, how quickly can we do that?
Yeah, just a couple weeks. We just need to draft it, review it. I can report back next month. If you want to see the language before we put it up, I can bring it back next month, or we can just put it up and take a look at it with it live already on the website. Either way is fine.
I mean, if Commissioner Wilson's okay with it, my sense is, go ahead and I trust you guys to capture the concepts that we've outlined here, put it up and report back to us next month. Does that sound reasonable, Commissioner Wilson?
Yeah, I would concur, Chair Matich, with that recommendation. And I also want to, thank Mr. Bainbridge and his staff for their, diligent follow-up on these requests. And I also want to say that I do not have any new recommendations for this meeting. So when you go back to your staff, if they ask, well, did Commissioner Wilson come up with any more ideas? You can tell them no, but I can't commit that I won't have any at our next month's meeting. So.
Yeah, you get a month off to catch up, and that's it. All right. All right, very good then. Any public comment on item 5, our discussion of advice letters that are on the FPPC website? Hearing and seeing none, that concludes our agenda for today. Commissioner Wilson, any final thoughts or words before we move to adjourn?
No, I don't have anything additional to add.
All right, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So move that we adjourn.
All right, I will second that. Ms. Linker?
Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
Chair Matich.
Aye.
The motion passes.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone, for your hard work. Appreciate it. Commissioner
Thank you.
Wilson, good to see you, and I'll
Thank
see
you
you
all.
next week.
Okay.
All right, take care, you guys.
All right.